an overview of applied behavior analysis. Applied behavior analysis is a therapy based on principles to produce positive changes in behavior. This video will cover many of the important topics of applied behavior analysis. The topics covered will include an introduction to ABA, various concepts and an overview of ABA through 4 different sections. It will also break down 6 different components which are very significant for ABA, and eventually will finish with functional analysis. So let's understand the introduction of ABA. ABA looks to study how and why of behavior, and this is done through an investigation. ABA strategies should be individualized for each child. We know children are unique in their own ways and have their own idiosyncrasies. Professionals become board certified behavior analysts, and they work as independent practitioners and offer behavioral services. This is a large emphasis on evidence-based strategies. The decisions that are made are always based on data, and the great thing is that behavior is looked to provide training to family members, caregivers, as they spend most of the time with the children. Caregiver desires to learn and help children. Moving across now to cover some of the concepts. One main concept is operant conditioning. This type of conditioning requires having a reinforcement or reward after the behavior has occurred. Classical conditioning is similar, but in this case, classical conditioning focuses on involuntary reactions. Think of Pavlov's dog experiment. Environmental stimuli or study the behavior of children, and students are altered by the changes in perception of the environment. Reinforcements, anything that increases the frequency of the behavior. There is positive and negative reinforcement. Well, punishment, on the other hand, is something that decreases the likelihood of behavior. It is important to understand it is the behavior that is being punished and not the child. Punishment is important for behavior modification. Characteristics of ABA. First, applied, meaning it is based on significant social behavior for all. Behavior must be observable and measurable in all situations. Analytic, that is research experimentation and making sense out of all the researches. It should be plotted like a graph. Generality, the work should apply to different groups of different environment. It can be used on different people. Technological, describe in a way the most researchers can understand how it is written. And next, conceptually systematic, so that the field is based on common behavioral principles. And lastly, it should be effective. The children are seeing actual results of ABA. The next section is ABCs of ABA. To understand the role of consequence in behavior, A stands for antecedents, which is very significant. B stands for behavior, and C stands for consequence. The antecedent is what happens before the behavior. For example, first the teacher lectures and then assigns 5 pages of work. The behavior is the action as a result of interceding. So maybe the student yelled at the teacher or a student, and the consequence is what comes after the behavior. So the teacher sent the student to the guidance counselor's office as a result of yelling. And next section is measurement of behavior. Behavior analysts use different methods to collect the data. They may collect data by frequency. For example, Joe hit someone 5 times, the review by punching or kicking. Next is rate. For example, 12 hits in 6 hours. You can still count the hits, but it is a time component which is added up there. The third is duration. Here we may have a scene that is crying for 10 minutes, so measure time for the beginning of the meltdown to the finish. Response latency. You will calculate the amount of the time it takes a student to correctly respond after being told. So it takes a 15 seconds to read after being told. The next is teaching strategies. First is the discrete trial teaching. Instructions are given to students in a very concise manner, and the student's good behavior is rewarded. The rewards are incentives or it vary among students. The next strategy is naturalistic, which is used more for guidance of socialization skills, usually for autistic children, and is based in the child's own environment. Next, token economy is used to modify behavior by rewarding students for making the right choices. They receive tokens that can be cashed in for rewards. Contingent observation is very similar to giving a student a timeout. A child may be removed from the fun activity because they are being disruptive. And now we are going to take a look at some of the common components of ABA. First is task analysis. That is breaking down of a skill into manageable tasks. First, you want to identify the target skill. It could be something very simple as tying up of a shoe. The moment you identify the target, number 2, determine the prerequisite for the skill. The moment you understand that what are the basic things, you like to break down the skill into subparts. So every single small component which leads to the task is identified, and then test the components. Once you have identified all the components, then you test them up to see that the task is achieved, and eventually you teach the skill to the student following all these components, and then it becomes mastering the task. At last, you assess the child. Moving on to shaping. Shaping is gradually modifying an existing behavior to a desired one. For example, let's say a student is afraid of public speaking, specifically giving a speech in front of the class. Begin shaping by first having a student to just sit and speak from the desk. And then, once he's confident, then move him to a standing position, and then he can stand and speak. And gradually, when he becomes more confident and comfortable about the whole process, then we can speak using the notes to read from. And publicly, without any support, is our target that he should start doing it. So ultimately, you want a student to reach a goal of speaking confidently in front of the class. Next is generalization. Here is students apply what they learned in the classroom to a real life situation. One method of teaching is using different examples. If you are teaching what the ball is, you want to show them many different examples of the ball to get a full understanding of its meaning. Generalize by using different people if you're teaching them shaking hand. So let them shake hands with variety of people to understand the concept. One of the most important ways to generalize is using it in the different settings. So playing, for example, for a child, it's not only playing in the park, playing in the playground, playing while the recess. And now the next is prompting. Prompting can be used to redirect students' attention and behavior. One way the prompt is by using gestures, indicate towards the desired behavior. A verbal prompt is as simple as telling a student, please be quiet or raise hand before you speak. Positional prompts are tricky. Place two choices near child with the desirable choice closer to the student, in the wrong choice further away from the student. Visual prompt includes pictures, photographs, flashcards about the target behavior. And at last but not the least is the physical prompt, which includes physically guiding or touching the toddler to help him or her use the target behavior, like tapping the toddler's hand, which is already on the toy car, to cue him to push the car. So that is physical prompt. Fading. Fading is slowly and systematically decreasing the amount of assistance needed for the students to complete a task or activity. Fading is often paired with prompting, where teacher is able to get to the point where they don't need prompt anymore, which is the goal. The prompt becomes less and less intrusive until mastery. While teaching a child to read, initially a physical prompt is needed. At first, you may replace more intrusive prompt with a less intrusive prompt. But the goal in mind is to have a self-sufficient student. It doesn't need any prompting eventually. So the next component is extinction. With extinction, the reinforcement for problem behavior is ignored. Here is an example of reinforcing behavior. Let's say you have a child that wants a soda instead of an apple juice. So the child throws the juice on the floor and the mom stresses out and tells the child, drink whatever you want, thus reinforcing the behavior. Instead of, parents should just walk away and not give the child the soda that he wants, thereby decreasing the likelihood that it will happen again. There are many more ways to use extinction. The other examples can also be considered. There are many more ways extinction can be used other than this example. And at last we come to functional analysis. Functional behavior analysis is a scientific process. Teachers use functional behavior assessment, FBAs, to determine why the students behave in a certain way. FBA identifies why and how, where and when of the behavior. All these questions are answered from the research, again with a particular focus on why of the behavior. ABC charts used to collect data through observation of the antecedent of behavior and the consequences that follows the behavior. Behavior intervention plans are formed. These points should be specific to each child and reviewed time to time. And once the behavior intervention plan is used, we are bound to get the desired results. Thank you.